everyone, it's me and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a super fun, chatty sit-down recommendation video. It's going to be a recommendation video for some of my favorite booktubers. I've been watching booktube for years now, and there are a couple of different booktubers that I love to go to for all of my recommendations and building out my TBR. I thought it would be great to kind of recommend them a variety of different types of books just because I am so familiar with their tastes at this point in time. I think I have a really good vibe off of what each of these booktubers is going to be looking for in like a potential 4 or 5 star read. So let's get into today's video with all of the various different recommendations. So the first booktuber that I want to talk about is none other than Sarah Caroli. Sarah Caroli has been, one of probably my favorite booktubers in the last couple of years. I love her content. She's got just a really cute girl aesthetic, and she does a really good wide variety of genre reads. She's a bit of a mood reader like myself, so I love watching her channel and just how cozy everything is. Sarah's book taste has changed quite a bit over the years. She used to read a lot of contemporary romance as well as fantasy, and I would just say that I think Sarah within the last year has really started to move her reader taste more towards general fiction, with falling in love with Frederick Bachman. I absolutely love Frederick Bachman as well, and I finished My Friends back in February, which happened to be one of my favorite reads from the month of February. So Sarah's book taste has been changing over the years, and I think she is just looking for more like general fiction type reads and reads that really pull on the emotions. She's also somebody I think that likes more character driven stories as opposed to plots. And I can see that with some of her favorites, with some of her recent favorite books. Really enjoyed the names as well as a bunch of Frederick Bachman books. She's been going through his backlist and rereading those. So the book I think that Sarah would be really into is Workhorse. And I am about 50% of the way through this book myself. And this book, if you're not familiar with it, this is following kind of this girl that works for a magazine in the early 2000s. It is giving 100% The Devil Wears Prada and that same type of work environment. There's not a whole lot of like day-to-day plot. That most of the story you're following the main girlie as she's just kind of like living out her office girl life at this magazine. She's trying to fit in the early 2000s in a place where it is very like hierarchical within this like company. And this takes place in New York City. I know Sarah loves going to the city, and I feel like this would be a really fun book for her to sit down and binge read. I absolutely love the writing so far, which is insane because this is actually a debut book from a debut author. And I am so curious to see what else this author is going to be putting out, because right now I would say this is leaning towards a 5-star read for myself. Also, this book is on Kindle Unlimited. It's a great one to pick up if you're just looking for something to download really quickly, as well as just something that's a little bit more character focused. It has a lot more just like day-to-day kind of drama that this character is working through at this magazine. So that would be my recommendation for Sarah, would be Workhorse. The next two booktubers are kind of a package deal. They're a husband and wife duo, and that is Ian and Ashlyn. I love Ian and Ashlyn. I think they're super cute, and they always seem to have a very good like variety of reads that they're going through. Ashlyn, of course, she has this very bubbly personality, but don't let that fool you, because this girl can read some dark academia. She loves Gothic literature. She's actually in the process of writing a book right now as well, which is a Gothic novel. And then Ian, on the flip side, Ian reads a variety of different books too. He's most well known for his like takes on Stephen King, but he also reads a lot of fantasy and science fiction. He recommended Blake Crouch, and I read almost every single one of Blake Crouch's like backlist up to this point based upon his reviews. I really value his like critiques and honesty in his reviews. I know he's not going to sugarcoat it, whether or not he's gonna like a certain type of book. So both of them have very wide ranges of what they like to read. And I'm gonna start with Ian's recommendation first, because I think his was a little bit easier to pinpoint than Ashlyn's in my opinion. If you've been following Ian for some time, you know that he is a fan of kind of this like more classical style of writing. At least in my eyes, that's how I would describe it. He loves Pat Conroy. He loves, the Brothers Karamazov. He's read some really heavy classics, including The Count of Monte Cristo. And for that reason, I think he would absolutely love the author Immortelles. Amor Towles is also an author that Blake Crouch really holds in high esteem. I think because of that, he's gonna really enjoy some of the writing from Amor. So Amor has a really good book that I think that Ian would absolutely love, and it's called A Gentleman in Moscow. This book is following a man in the early 1900s during the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. And this very wealthy aristocratic man is accused by the government of kind of doing some like anarchy kind of stuff by writing a very well-written poem, a article, if you will, kind of about his love for Russia, and it's kind of viewed as like a stab against the new regime. So he ends up becoming under house arrest at this very, very famous hotel in Moscow called the Metropole Hotel. This is actually a true location. This is a real place. And this man has to live out the rest of his days, for the rest of his life, under house arrest in this very fancy hotel. So you see a lot of just like inner grapplings that this man has to deal with, and the fact that he is here for the rest of his life. This is something that he is like having a hard time embracing, coming from like an aristocratic background. And he is a patriot at heart, and so you find him just struggling to figure out like his loyalty to Russia. You see him just struggling with like day to day how to have purpose and meaning while living in this hotel. And this is more of like a character study type of book, and the way that it is written, it feels like a classic. I've actually read this book twice. I've listened to it on audiobook, but the first time I read it was on like a physical copy, and I think having read it twice, I would say I probably prefer the audiobook. Just, it helped flesh some of the language out for me. But I know Ian loves big books, so I think this would be a perfect one for him. And I know that he loves Russian literature based upon like some of his other book reviews. So I would definitely recommend A Gentleman in Moscow to Ian. On the flip side, his wife was a little bit harder for me to pinpoint what she would like, just because her reader taste has changed so much since I first started watching her on BookTube. Again, kind of like Sarah, she started off reading a lot of like cutesy romance. She kind of had like a phase last year where she was reading a lot of romance as well. But I would say probably within like the last 8 or 9 months, she's picked up more kind of like moody reads. And so for that reason, I think she is going to love The Vampires of El Norte. This was one of my favorite books that I read of all time from last year. It made it to the top 5 of my favorite books. The Vampires of El Norte, I think Ashlyn would really enjoy, just because this is a historical fiction romance and it is so swoony in the romance genre. It has very dark, like gothic undertones to it. The way that this book is categorized is a horror historical fiction romance. To me, the horror elements are not that scary. The vampires are these like mythical creatures, more or less. It's not like your typical Dracula. And basically the story is following this couple in the 1800s in Mexico, kind of during the Spanish-American War. And there is this very wealthy girl. She lives on this farm, this cattle ranch, and one of the ranch hands falls in love with her as young kids, but they have a very traumatic incident that happens that separates the two, and the young boy ends up running away, and the young girl believes him to be dead, and the boy thinks that the girl is dead. So they end up meeting again 10 years later, and it is just, it's so swoon-worthy and absolutely romantic in like a very different way than a lot of other romances that I've read. So for that reason, I think Ashlyn would absolutely love it. The last booktuber that I want to give a recommendation to is none other than Meg with Books. Meg with Books predominantly reads a lot of mystery thrillers, and I found some really good mystery thrillers based upon her reading recommendations. She also really enjoys nonfiction and also any books that kind of feature strong women. But for this recommendation, I would love to give Meg a book recommendation that is a mystery thriller that I recently read and gave 5 stars to, and that would be It's Not Her by Mary Kubica. I believe Meg has read a couple other Mary Kubica books. This one came out back in February. It's a very classic whodunit murder mystery. It's got criminal proceedings. It also has just a very interesting sense of unease that is woven throughout the story. And this book is following a family that goes on a vacation gone wrong, because what happens is it's 2 families, and one of the families, the husband and wife, gets murdered. the young girl in the family goes missing, and then the son is found asleep upstairs in this cabin. So the setting is very iconic. It takes place at this like kind of lakeside cabin type of camping location, and there's just a really good like back and forth dual perspectives of kind of past present timeline of what's occurring and kind of what has led up to this murder and who committed the crime. So those are all of the recommendations that I have in today's video. You guys, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next one soon.